MMA is undoubtedly one of the fastest growing sports in the world, but it's no secret that the sport is much more popular in some countries than it is in others. There are plenty of reasons for this. Some countries have a strong martial arts tradition, whilst others simply focus on other things, as well as economic factors. Today we're discussing which country produces the best MMA fighter and why. Stay tuned. Let's get straight into it then. Where are the best fighters from? Let's establish something right from the very start. Any list of best fighters is always going to be subjective, but there are some general truths we can all agree on. We've seen some truly superb fighters over the years from various countries across the planet, but if we were to choose just 3 countries where the overwhelming majority of those greats came from, they would undoubtedly be Brazil, Russia, and the United States. Of course, there are other world-class fighters who have come from lesser MMA-focused countries, such as Valentina Shevchenko, Israel Adesanya, and Kamaru Usman. But what is interesting about the last 2 in particular is that they would emigrate to Western countries during their formative years. Who knows if this was the biggest factor in where they are today or not? And then there are complete outliers like Conor McGregor. Although not one of the best fighters right now, he has previously been one of the best on the planet. The same can also be said for current stars such as Yuri Prochaska, Czech Republic, Ion Cutelaba, Moldova, and Alexander Gustafsson, Sweden, who are all fighters from countries with little to no traditional MMA pedigree. Of course, as the sport grows, more and more fighters will appear from these nations, and you'll only have to look at someone like upcoming Irish talent Ian Garry as proof. Why do you guys think so many MMA stars come from the big 3 countries? So what is behind the overwhelming majority coming from those 3 places? Let's see. Well, we only have to look at the numbers to realize that USA, Brazil, and Russia dominate the scene. All 3 countries have produced multiple champions, and each of them currently has at least 1 UFC champion, 2 in the case of Brazil. Many of the greatest fighters of all time come from these countries too, with fighters like Anderson Silva, Khabib Nurmagomedov, John Jones, Jose Aldo, BJ Penn, Matt Hughes, and others all safely on the top 20 of all-time list. Of course, all 3 countries have huge populations, all more than 100 million. So when you compare this to a country like McGregor's Ireland or Yuri's Czech Republic, who have minuscule populations, in comparison, it begins to make a little more sense. As we know, it isn't simply down to the size of a population. MMA is one of the most popular sports in each of these countries, which also greatly helps. I mean, you don't see many world-class British beach volleyball champions, if you see what we mean. The more popular a sport is in any given country, the more money is available to be pumped into it, meaning training facilities and quality of coaching increases. We can also look at huge countries like China and India. MMA traditionally holds little to no interest in these areas, which is just as well for the big 3, as if they did it, it wouldn't take long for them to produce world champions. I mean, China seems to be heading that way now anyway. Let's break it down even further then. Where are the different disciplines most popular? Anyone who is familiar with MMA will know that each separate discipline, wrestling, striking, grappling, etc., are synonymous with different parts of the world. Whilst Khabib Nurmagomedov and Islam Makhachev have put Dagestan and Russia in general on the map for their world-class wrestling, Brazilians are famed for their jiu-jitsu experience. Fighters like Royce Gracie, Anderson Silva, Jose Aldo, Patricio Pitbull, Damian Maia, Amanda Nunes, and Fabrizio Verdum can all be considered some of the best BJJ exponents in history, and all hail from the nation of Brazil. Of course, Americans are no slouches when it comes to wrestling either, and have a solid NCAA wrestling program. One of the most difficult aspects to pin down to one particular nation is striking. Whilst fighters like Conor, Stipe, Petr Yan, and Max Holloway have all won UFC titles and are widely regarded as the best boxers the sport has ever seen, they're all from vastly different places: Ireland, Croatia, America, Russia, Hawaii. Disciplines like Muay Thai and kickboxing are easier to qualify. Muay Thai quite obviously is synonymous with Thailand, but there's only currently 1 Thai UFC fighter. When we talk about kickboxing, however, we instantly think of Holland, Alistair Overeem, Stefan Struve, Bas Rutten, Jagar Mousasi, Ernesto Hoost, and Rico Verhoeven are all kickboxing stars who hail from the Netherlands, some of whom have appeared in the UFC. Why do you guys think some countries excel at some disciplines? Next up, why has it taken China so long to wake up to MMA? Let's discuss. China marches to the beat of its own drum drum in more ways than one. The ancient nation has always held martial arts in high regard, but it's safe to say they have been slow on the uptake when it comes to the fastest growing combat sport in the world. However, signs are pointing to the fact that this is slowly changing. Even though plenty of martial arts can trace their roots back to China, the country, its people, and culture are not inherently violent, so they simply aren't as interested in a sport as brutal as MMA. These days, even Kung Fu is looked upon more through nostalgic lenses, rather than people actually practicing the sport. Another factor, which may sound like a massive generalization, is that sports in general are not as big as they are in other countries. Apart from the obvious, football, Chinese people simply don't care and know literally about nothing about other global sports which are popular around the world. Add to this the fact that the country has gone through years of trauma, from Mao's Great Leap Forward, a mantra which still holds some weight in the country. People generally still don't have the time to watch sports as they are too busy working. Whilst there is change coming in the form of Zhang Weili, Song Yadong, and Li Jinglang, it might be some time before we see MMA dominated by Chinese fighters. Give us your thoughts below. Let's look into why so many grapplers are Brazilian then. Stay tuned. Well, it would be slightly too easy to say the Gracie family are the biggest factor, but that's almost certainly true. The legendary Brazilian family took the Japanese form of jiu-jitsu, which has no real uses in a street fight, and adapted it to become one of the most useful weapons when it comes to hand-to-hand combat. With their roots in Paisley, Scotland, the family developed the martial art after George Gracie moved to Para, Brazil. Fast forward a few generations and there are literally scores of Gracie family members scattered all over the world, most of whom are well versed in the martial art. Undoubtedly, Helio Gracie's line of the family are the most synonymous with BJJ, and the martial art is now one of the biggest in Brazil. These days, there is simply no way a Brazilian fighter will not have gone through countless hours in a Brazilian jiu-jitsu training facility. Whilst coming up, and Helio's son Royce, the very first UFC tournament winner, is still actively practicing and overseeing the sport in his native Brazil. Once Royce showed everyone what was possible with BJJ, his countrymen flocked to the gym to get in on it. Do you guys practice BJJ? Let us know below. And finally, why are Dagestani wrestlers so dominant? Well, former UFC welterweight challenger Ben Askren thinks he has the answer. Of course, there are a ton of excellent Dagestani wrestlers, and Askren himself was a world-class wrestler during his stint as Bellator champion. But why do so many world-class wrestlers hail from the small area of southern Russia? The region is known to be hyper-masculine, and many disputes have been settled by wrestling for generations. Randy Couture once pointed out that they learned to wrestle from a very young age in Dagestan, which is why it comes so naturally to them. Askren also suggested that wrestling is a big deal to any young Dagestani, and went on to claim that because the area is so poor, a lot of families see the sport as a way out. Of course, Khabib Nurmagomedov is the most well-known export of Dagestan's fabled wrestling program, and we also now have Islam Makhachev, the recently crowned lightweight champion. Both these guys grew up wrestling under the tutelage of Khabib's father, Abdul Manap, who was just one of a ton of world-class wrestling coaches who call the region home. Are you guys big wrestling fans? Let us know below. As usual, thanks for stopping by today, and remember to join us again next time when we will be discussing all sorts of other cool stories. And why not do us a solid by liking today's video, whilst also sharing it with any MMA enthusiast you might have lurking in the depths of these socials. Bye guys!